So I decided to do a video about 8 common things that new kitchen managers either do or don't do. Tips to help people that are just getting started. Maybe they just got promoted and they don't really know where to start. The first one is not delegating. You do not need to do everything yourself. If you try to do everything, you might end up doing nothing. Maybe you don't need to make the prep list, every morning. Maybe you can hand that to a different cook. There's things that you're not even realizing that you're going to have to do, like talking to the vendors or figuring out maintenance schedules, like having like the reach-ins worked on if they go out, having like emergencies that pop up that you weren't thinking. Maybe the hood cleaners haven't shown up like they were supposed to, or you don't even know who the hood cleaners are because you're brand new and you got to figure them, who they are. And, maybe there's specific items that the old executive chef was ordering that you could probably find cheaper somewhere. But while you're doing all of this, these other things end up getting neglected. So you have to be able to think about like what those things might be and if somebody else is able to do them. I'm not saying delegate everything, because then you're not even being a boss. You're just being a some dude that goes to the restaurant where everybody else does your job, And there are managers like that. Number 2 is assuming that the message is getting passed around. What ends up happening is that you're not having meetings. You're not having tag-up meetings. You're not having pre-shift, pre-service meetings, or whatever you want to call them. And because of that, you might tell a cook something, and then that cook remembers it, but then they don't tell the other cooks. Or there might be something that the front of house needs to remember when they're putting in orders that you didn't tell the back of house, and then that server didn't tell anybody else. And people will have all these conflicting things, and you'll end up in a situation where one person is doing it the way you asked, and 2 other people are not doing it the way you asked, and, third or fourth person is doing it some other completely different way because they misunderstood what you told them. So I highly recommend doing a pre-shift, pre-service meetings, and then also having a weekly meeting with everybody, with your entire staff, to kind of go over like the pros, the cons, the good, the bad, the ugly, and ask for feedback, ask if anybody has anything that they have noticed that they want to contribute, because that's when you end up finding out things that they've been dealing with and solving a problem for you that maybe you could solve permanently. Then everybody stays on the same page and they become a cohesive unit that's all together. Because once you have a fractured unit, once you have a fractured team, then it gets really hard to get things done, and that's how you can end up with a lot of congestion on the line, and it just turns into a shit show. The next common mistake I've seen new kitchen managers make, and even some older ones, is not checking the boxes when they're in the walk-in or the freezer. Now, we're going to use like a small town, or not a small town, we're going to use like a simple diner that serves breakfast items as an example for this. So you're doing your order, and you see that you're going through and you're writing things down. You can see that there's a box of hash browns open, but there's still a whole case there, so you know that that's going to get you through the next X amount of days. You don't need to order it for a couple more days. But what you didn't know is that one of the dumbass cooks took the last bag of hash browns out and left the empty box in the freezer, so now you're out of hash browns and you didn't realize it. Then all of a sudden you're halfway into breakfast service and you're like, where the fuck are the hash browns? And they didn't get ordered. Well, they didn't get ordered because you thought you had a full case, or at least a half a case or something, and you didn't have anything, And that can happen with so many things, anything that's in a case. So what's best to do, the best practice for this, is when you're doing your order, go through the walk-in, go through the freezer, and physically, any box that looks like it's open, look inside of it, grab the last couple of whatever and put them out, even if you don't need to order it. Like, you physically do something to indicate, like, okay, I've pulled the last bag of hash browns out, whatever. And then you probably want to have a talk with your staff about, look, if there's only one thing in there, you don't need to leave an entire box in there. It fucks with the inventory, it fucks with the ordering and whatever. And if they don't like it, tough shit, you're the kitchen manager. The next common mistake I have seen is either being too soft or too hard when you first start being a new kitchen manager. What I'll see a lot of is, I'll get into the soft thing because that actually ties in with the next common mistake that I've seen. But being too hard on your staff, kind of ruling with an iron fist and kind of almost getting like, it appears like you're power tripping, like you need to do this, and like you're being like a prick about it when you really don't need to be. Because this job is really about leadership, and you want people that are going to do what you say even when you're not there. And using fear, anger, and like being like, I don't give a fuck what you think, I said do it this way, especially if you're not very good at your own job, they're not going to respect you. And I'll tell you right now, anything you're telling them, they're not going to do it when you're not there. You need them to be able to have that respect for you, and you need to show leadership and not expect anything from your staff that you wouldn't do yourself. So when the time comes for you to rip somebody out for something that they did, they know that they've seen you do the exact same thing before, and so they know they're in the wrong, right? Wrong, right? Being too soft is also an issue, and you will see this, you'll see one or the other in the spectrum all the time. Now, with being soft, a lot of times this is associated with somebody who got a job, got a promotion, and they have a bunch of friends that work there with them. So what happens is you think to yourself, man, this is going to be so awesome. All of my friends are here. This is going to be a great team. You know, they're going to be there for me. They are not going to be there for you. Now, out of 10 executive chefs, every 10 kitchen managers, one of those kitchen managers will have friends that respect them, right? But for most people, your friends, as soon as they find out that you're the kitchen manager, that makes them think like, oh, that means I can get away with like walking out of here with free food. Oh, that means that I can take off time whenever I want. I can leave early. I could come in whenever I want. I won't get in any trouble because they're my friend. Right there, that is the shit. So for those people, you do need to put them in their place really quick, because the thing is, you guys can be the best friends outside of work, but when you step through those kitchen doors, you are now the kitchen manager and they are now your subordinate. You are now their boss. You need to be able to treat them like anybody else in the restaurant and not show favoritism. And that will help you in the long run, because it gets really stressful when your friends start taking advantage of you and taking free food home or walking in an hour late because they think they can get away with it because their friend's the kitchen manager, right? So that kind of goes in with the leadership thing. That's kind of why I tied it in. But generally, just being too soft also is a recipe for disaster, because if you don't run the kitchen will run you, period. 100% of the time. So you have to strike a balance between being a hard ass when you need to be, but being a respectable hard ass and not just being a prick. There's actually one dude that we had that tried using the excuse that he was in jail and he couldn't come in over the weekend, and one of our other cooks busted him at the bar that same Friday night. He used the excuse that he went to prison, that he went to jail on like a DUI charge or something, so he could get a free weekend pass to go get wasted. Not valuing the guest, not valuing the customer, not valuing the staff, that all kind of falls into like a big umbrella, but specifically not respecting the guests. I kind of want to have this idea that they are guests coming into my place. And yes, they're paying me, but they're paying me for an experience, and they're paying me for a level of hospitality and for quality food, and I want to give that to them. So yes, they're paying, but they're paying guests. If your family came in and they ordered exactly what table 4 ordered, how would you treat them? And think about that and treat them that way. And then you'll never have to worry about a server coming back and being like,
hey, so table 5 is the boss, or is the owner, so make sure you make it really good.
You should be making all of your food that good, right? There shouldn't be like I'm going to make this food better because it's for the boss. Like, they should all be the boss. They should all be the family, right? And if you get into the habit of doing that, then that gives you that makes your job a lot easier in the long run, because what you're creating is something called a culture. You're creating a culture of giving a shit about the food and the customer and the guests and all of that, instead of a culture of laziness. Staying on the line too much. This is almost exclusively a problem of new kitchen managers, is they get on the line and they want to spend all their time on the line. This kind of falls into the territory of delegating a little bit, but it's its own unique issue. And let me explain. So if you work at a place for 10 years, right? Or that's kind of excessive. Let's say that you've been there for 2 years and they decided that you're finally due for a promotion, the old kitchen manager's leaving and you're going to be taking their place, and you take their place. Well, you have spent 2 years of your life developing the habit of coming in, doing a certain amount of prep or whatever, and getting on the line, cooking for a certain amount of time, doing your closing work or whatever, and going home. So, but now you have a whole other list of responsibilities that are not cooking related. Like, yes, you're going to be cooking sometimes, but most of the time you're going to be doing things in the back office. You're going to be doing things with the schedules, things with the vendors, things with like the repair people and stuff like that, like I said. So if you spend all that time on the line, like, yes, you're there for your cooks, but you don't always need to be. And that is something that I've seen happen a lot, is this habit. The number one most common thing I have seen is people trying to reinvent the wheel. So many cooks and chefs that are brand new, may even still be green, they get this kind of idea of like, I'm going to completely transform the restaurant. It's going to turn into the best thing ever. It's going to be this awesome thing. And, we're going to get rid of all of this and we're going to do things this way and we're going to start portioning this thing that we never portioned before. We're going to completely change the side work list. And they try to like reinvent the wheel and it doesn't work. Like, a lot of times things are the way they are for a reason. And consider that, especially with a restaurant that's been around for a long time, a lot of times those things that you're trying to implement had actually tried to be implemented before and they failed. I'll give you an example. One of the places that I worked at was Perkins Restaurant and Bakery. It's like the very first place. That's where I started out as a dishwasher before I was ever a line cook. Now, when I became a cook, one of the managers had tried to implement was portioning French fries, right? Because of how he felt that we were giving too big of portions of French fries on dishes. Well, there's multiple ways that you could have approached this, but he decided that it would be worth the cook's time to go sit in the back of the prep kitchen and prep 2 or 3 boxes of French fries into 7-ounce portions. The problem is you're now paying for the labor to do something that you previously didn't have to pay for the labor. So what could be done instead is, if you run into this problem of like, well, French fries are being overportioned, the way that you can solve this is, instead of portioning them out individually in bags and spending money on bags and the labor, you can get like a small bowl and a scale, and they don't have to portion out every single one, but when it's slow and when they have time, they can use a little metal bowl about that big and throw the fries in there, measure it out to 7 ounces, and put it in the fryer. Then what ends up happening is you get a muscle memory, and you're so used to seeing the same 7-ounce portions of fries that you know how much you need to grab. So when you end up in a situation where you have a full rail and you have 13, 14, 15 orders of fries, you have a pretty good idea of how many fries to do at a time, and about how many orders of fries you could fit in one basket and things like that. So basically it's training your staff to have a muscle memory and understanding of fries versus you paying extra money to portion French fries out. I just wanted to go over a few things about starting out as a new kitchen manager. If you are a kitchen manager currently or have been for a while, leave your tips down below of anything else that you can think of. I know that I didn't cover everything because nobody wants to watch a 45-minute video on starting out being a manager. So, there were things about doing schedules I didn't cover, about specifics of ordering I didn't cover. And that being said, if there's something that you really want to hear about, that you really want like laser focus on, let me know about that down below too, and I can make a video just on that. My next video is actually going to be about mental health as it relates to the cook line and a little bit in general, and I'm going to kind of open up about my personal experiences, so stick around for that sometime later, either this week or next weekend. But you guys have an awesome, amazing day, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.